So actually, we invited Joel for a fairly specific reason, which we will get into our first topic of the day, lah. Right? Joan, do you want to fill us in on our first topic of the day?
Okay, so Joel is going to do a bootcamp for us in HammerHouse. So for those people, unfortunately, it's full already lah, but we'll have it going since the response is so good for the next round. If anybody's interested, just drop me a PM, or you can send me an email to partnership@hammerhouse.com.sg. So the bootcamp will be Joel coaching players, whether you are competitive, semi-competitive, casual, new players, on how to go into 40K in a more competitive mindset. Can I say that? Or
yeah, I would say the mindset is competitive, but the outcome maybe not. So if anything, it's more to help people like myself from like a couple years back, transition from more casual games where you're just picking out, throwing whatever you like against your friend, to more formal games where you have a little bit more structure in the way you think about how you prepare. The meta right now is very flat. So what I mean is the separation between a good army and a great army is not as big anymore. So there's a lot of room for people to express themselves. But within that, there's structure around like how do you think about the game? How do you think around the missions? It's just trying to give a little bit back because there were a lot of people when I was starting out, they were quite generous with their time with me. And I wanted to make sure that we could number one, like get people to play better games. I think that's more enjoyable when you feel competent, you know what you're doing and the game flows. I think we were talking about it earlier, right? Yeah. Ultimately, all these tabletop these are all like, they're war games, but they're actually social games, right?
Yes,
the
correct.
social part comes first before the game, and helping you navigate all the stuff around it, or giving you at least the way I've approached it. I think my hope is for people to take it on their own, and hopefully we have more players who are more comfortable expressing themselves to do better, better opponents, and then we can build a better team for WTC in the future.
Yeah. So I have a lot of feedback from players, more casual players, that they are unable to complete their game in a 3-hour time frame. So I think your bootcamp should be able to help them with this, right? Because personally, I can finish my game in 3 hours if my opponent also has the same capability, or without referring to rules, and know what his army is doing. In fact, 2.5 hours is good enough for us, I find. Yeah. So I hope and I think your bootcamp should help with this. And if you are a player who finds that you cannot finish your game in 3 hours, maybe this is the bootcamp for you.
Actually, there's one thing, right? Okay, so I personally am not a 40K player. Never touched the game. I'm more of a sword and board kind of guy, lah.
Yep.
But I want to right off the bat, right, admit something. Yeah. I just heard over the years, right, I just have negative impression of 40K. Okay?
Okay, we're going straight into it.
Yeah, we're going straight into it. Okay, right. Because I believe this is what the people want to hear. It's
okay.
Like, so if I'm new, right, and then I'm just like, okay, what about the Tauda meta, Joel? What about
I think Joel isn't here when the Tauda meta is present.
That was before my time, actually.
That
was before my time.
But then because I'm close to being a boomer.
Yeah.
Despite my youthful appearance. But because I guess my point being that there's at least in the past, okay, 40K has always been a game about just put the biggest, most newest things on the table, and then you win the game, right? So I believe that has changed somewhat, but maybe you can elucidate more for like the new players, right? For people who maybe are still like on the periphery, they're not very sure, they kind of heard some negative stuff about 40K. Maybe you can put their mind at ease regarding this particular topic.
Sure. So I think that there's two main parts around this, right? There's one which is within the game on the table itself, right? And then there's one that's surrounding the game, because I think sometimes you have great games that have a lot of what people call like toxic characters, and then that ruins the game for everybody. So let's just do that in part, right? So the first part about the game, just to give you a sense, at WTC, every team has to have 8 armies, and 8 armies have to be different. So what happens is when the meta is very skewed, that means like what you say, like everybody just throw the biggest hammer, and then we have that few broken things that just destroy everybody and nobody has a chance. Usually in that kind of scenario, what will happen is that at WTC you will have like every team overlapping 3-4 armies. There are always those armies, and then there's some periphery, and the range is very small. But at this latest WTC, every faction was represented except for one. And that was because they just came out. The points were not like, it was too short a time. It wasn't the best book. So people haven't found the list. Actually, that army just went 7-0 at a recent team tournament. So that means that of all the factions available, there is probably a playable list at the highest level. So that's on the table side. And then I think around it, there's like, in my head, there's always two things. The first one is like the social element, right? So that's about like communication. So to me, it's also about being able to communicate your needs with your opponent, right? So if you're here for a tournament, obviously you have certain expectations versus, hey Johan, I want a learning game. Tell me when I'm doing right or wrong.
Yep.
Communicating your expectations and letting your opponent communicate theirs to you, I think is a very important start. There are some people who will refuse to engage with you, but because from the onset you already tried to do that, you prep yourself. You don't feel like you have to be the person that gives in, right?
Yep.
And I think the second part is that, on a longer term basis, like culture is self-selecting. So if you're constantly communicating and people are not giving you the thing that you want, is it you or them? One will fix itself, right? Like if someone you ask for a game and that person is just, I guess this is one of the fears, right? Trashing you without helping you understand why. First of all, if you communicated a learning game and somebody comes here and just like smashes your face in, I think you yourself have a measure of who they are and you're not likely to call them again. And then with every sort of social thing, you meet 5 people, there's assholes everywhere. It doesn't change, right? Like it's different place, same shit. So, but you start to be able to self-select a little bit about who and
Who
what
you want to play with.
Correct. And then of course you must to some extent be some self-aware a little bit lah, right? Not to say that, it's always our fault, but you have to think a little bit about, okay, who were you in that game? How have you represented yourself? Are you representing yourself in a way that you want people to respond to you? Yeah, that's tricky.
I think in addition to that, okay, so for people who really know me, right, I started wargaming in 2013. I didn't start with 40k. I went straight into War Machine and HOTS. It's a kind of dead game coming back game now. So during my time in the tabletop war game scene, right, all I heard about 40k since that time, I think it was 6th ed that time, 2013, or 5th ed. It was the Tauda meta. 40k is who goes first, who win. Whoever has the big gun who go first will win. So what changes? And to be honest right now, right, I can tell everybody that I like playing the game now, 40k, and I think I'm enjoying it. The most important thing right now is because they introduced the terrain feature. So there are line of sight blocking right now.
It's very standardized.
There's no more first turn, I go first, I shoot you, you are dead, bye-bye, pack up, go home. Yeah. There is no more this kind of shit nonsense anymore.
That's the thing that, like previously in 40k, my understanding was you just get the longest range 72-inch blasting something, and then you just sit in one corner, then you can see everything on the map, and then you just start nuking. Or you just bring some unkillable, like Guliman or don't know what Primarch, just put him on the table. And then you have the flip side, right, which is, I remember one of the players, he was quite, he's one of those like RP players, like really like to build a thematic list, and go and bring Angron, only for Angron to be nuked on the first turn.
Yes,
then
Angron.
He just like, what?
I love Angron.
Yeah, so there's all these like really weird things happening in 40k.
Yeah, so if you are like me, right, you are the kind of people who heard of this thing about 40k. Oh, 40k first turn go in, die already. But let me assure you, it's not a thing anymore, and it's a game that is worth playing now. So come in while you can. If you are ever a 40k lover, law lover like John, come in now.
I love
now.
the law. I don't.
Wait. You love the law of 40k. I need to know which is who exactly are we talking about here?
I used to read a lot of the Space Marine books lah. My favorite one is the Night Lords, the series. I'm quite inclined towards the Chaos Space Marine side, but I heard that like across the meta, I think there was only like one moment in time where they kind of shine a little bit with their mutated Terminators. I can't remember what is it called.
The Possessed.
Possessed, is it?
I think there was that one moment in time where they were kind of like dominating. After that, it just kind of fell off the side. I don't hear anyone playing Chaos Space Marines.
Actually, interestingly about Chaos Space Marines, they do a few things very well. And so what happens is that over the course of a year, there's always a moment in the meta where they are incredibly dominating. Like 9th edition, there was this like right in Rhino, carry big hammer, run out and smash face. Like if you like smash and grab, that was the best Smash and Grab army you could play. And then at the WTC, the French team that won, they had this player who played what they call ACDC, right? It's like rock and roll. It's run and charge, and like a horde of bodies just like 人海战术, just smash you in the face. And that, I think he crashed a lot of very big names. Like, she's just like, here's all my things, here are all your problems, please solve them. Can solve, cannot solve, die. It was great.
So 40K is in a good place right now. If you're ever thinking about playing, or if you're ever thinking about coming back, it's a good time to come back right now.
Yeah,
I assure you that.
All right, let me go a little bit into Joel, what you mentioned previously about the social aspect of the game, because I think that one is a little bit more interesting as well.
Sure.
Because every gaming community, right, have some nuanced culture surrounding it.
Yep.
Right, like actually one of the things when I started fantasy, I was very particular when I was like bringing up new players. Okay, like when you do the measurements, you have to measure it like this. Like you have, like, you don't just pick up the miniature, then chuck it, then later, oh, sorry, I need to put it back. Like all these kind of rules, right? What do you think will be your focus on the bootcamp in regards to this like social aspect?
I think when it comes to the social element, the first is about understanding rules and communicating rules. So what I mean is, in 40K, especially at the higher level, I find there's this idea of playing by intention, right? So playing by intention means assuming all rules are known to all players and everything's on the table. What is the intention that you have played? So basically, that means that on a good day, you're winning because you made good decisions. On a bad day, you're losing because you made bad decisions, not because you have gotcha, right? Yep. The thing that everybody is afraid of. And that means like understanding what kind of questions to ask. Because sometimes you can gotcha yourself, right? Like if you assume, oh, I can do this, I don't know that they can do this or that, and I don't ask, then to be honest, that social element part comes in where is it really their fault? Like how far is someone responsible for your experience? Yep.
And I think it's also important to as a good player lah. So sometimes I will just inform my opponent, oh, if you do this, I'm going to do this. Do you still want to do that?
Yep. Yeah. And I think that is reciprocated, because I think when you do that, I find, especially in practice games, what it allows you to do is to learn about the decisions that you're making. Yep. And that translates when you go and play at the higher level, right? Because the good players, you don't need to assume that they know the rules. They know the rules, right? They know your rules, maybe sometimes better than you. They play twice as much as me for sure. So that allows you to even the score a little bit. It lets you bring you closer to a more pure game, in my mind.
Yeah, this gaming by intention, it's an interesting concept, and I really like it as well. I prefer to game that way, to be perfectly honest, right? But I think at some point, we also need to take into account that me as an opponent, right, I shouldn't be helping you. You know what I'm saying? I shouldn't be. I should let you make the mistakes on your own. What do you think about that?
Actually, I think it depends on context, right? So I think that if you are, and I think you're probably referring, if I'm not wrong, to like more competitive play, right? So
yeah, like hyper competitive, and let's say, I know I'm the type of player who would do anything to win.
So I think there's if I were to take the role of the person who's hyper competitive, right, and in some ways I am, then it really depends on at which context. So for example, at RTT, right, which is, for those who don't play, it's a 3-rounder, it's a 1-day thing. The prize and the entry is, let's be honest, right? If you play 40K, the prize and the entry is quite negligible, because right, you can't even buy one unit with your winnings. So at the RTT level, I think being hyper competitive and winning at all costs is actually very detrimental to you long term. It doesn't make sense, because what happens is that you are slowly but surely like stifling the community or killing the community. Because what you need at the RTT level, you want more people playing, so you have more opponents. Because it's a story game, you cannot play this game alone. You can play Space Marine 2, but it's not tabletop game.
We'll get into.
Right? Then at the GT, where you're competing for a golden ticket, which is basically the GW's equivalent of you get to play at your solo world championships, right? The best singles event. At that level, if you are signing up for that, whether or not you are a newbie, you are whatever, you are here to win that ticket. Like very few people are there purely to have a good time. There are people. And when you meet those people, please be nice to them. They're not really trying to win. They just have beautiful painted armies and having a good time. Even if you give them a good time, you're probably going to win. And if you can't beat them when they are just trying to have a good time, then I'm sorry, you're not really winning anything. So, I think it scales. Like, it really scales.
I think you can not help your opponent, but still be a nice opponent.
Yeah. And I think in the GT, nobody's expecting you to, like, at a very high-end tournament, like the very competitive top end, nobody's really expecting anything. But I think at the smaller tournaments, at least for myself, I feel like I should expect a little bit more of myself. Because if I get 2-1 or I get 3-0 or I get 1-3 or whatever the score is, does it really matter? No. To me, it doesn't matter.
It just reminds me of the ETC, the fantasy. One of my former captains, Justin, he's a lawyer here in Singapore. He's a great guy.
Is he the X-Wing champion?
X-Wing champion. Okay?
World champion.
He's the X-Wing world champion, and he was live on camera, live for the whole world to see, right? At the final table, the opponent actually made a mistake with one of the movements. That was a mistake that Justin could have capitalized, and then basically just like trounced him. But Justin said, hey, you should reconsider that because of certain... I'm not very familiar with the rules of X-Wing, but basically this particular interaction made some news within like gaming circles, within gaming communities, that this is the ultimate sportsmanship, right? Which is you let your opponent know when something funky is up, right? Maybe they accidentally violated the rules, but you could capitalize on their violation, but instead you choose not to, and then you say, okay, you shouldn't be doing this.
And I think that's the way he got there in the first place, right? Because if your whole experience has been, I beat people because I am better, I have played better, when it reaches the point in which the stress is on, the lights are on, everybody's looking, and you stay that way, I think over the long run, you're more likely to do well. Because you have the good habits, you have the good decision making, and it's constant, right? It's consistent.
if you can beat your opponent when they know their rules well, it means you're better, right? You don't need to capitalize on their mistakes.
Yes, I think so.